Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to News Talk Tonight. I'm Dave Moore, your host. I will be joined shortly by my co-host, Brian Lee, who's just arrived in studio. That's because Jen Just is sick. Jen, I know you got a really bad cold, and I know that your entire house is basically under quarantine at this point in time. Get better, get rested, get back. News Talk Tonight is brought to you by Amazon.com, Gateway Financial Partners, Sanders Travel, Shipper Technologies, Budwitz and Meyer Jack CPAs, Deepwater Seafood of Avon, and CentralCTDental.com. Well, you know, I was casting about the things that we might want to talk about since we've been on a 2-week hiatus. And geez, the only thing that really comes to mind is the fiscal cliff. You know, all right, to be honest with you, this is a financial, political situation that is truly of our own making.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, we're basically being hoisted by our own petard. And the 112th Congress is proving once again just how ineffective it truly was.
Correct.
And it's a shame, because one of the politicos that was involved in the last minute negotiations was, I thought, one of the people who really kind of was sticking it to us, Mitch McConnell.
Mm-hmm.
And the minority leader actually came through with a decent compromise with the vice president. I was not planning on staying up last night. Not at all. It would have been the first New Year's that I had not seen the ball drop. Happy New Year, by the way, to our erstwhile listeners. But I was woken up by my oldest daughter calling. And, of course, whenever a parent receives a phone call after 11, you kind of are like awake like that.
Mm-hmm.
And, no, it was just because she was wanting to wish everybody a happy new year and perhaps have one of her friends' parents talk to us. And it was like, no, happy new year, dear, and good night.
Have a nice night.
Yeah. And because I was so amped up by the phone call coming in at 11:47 p.m., not only did I watch the ball drop, and got to tell you, I didn't even bother tuning into CBS.
No.
They had nothing. They had nothing. Ryan Seacrest really didn't have a whole lot either.
The show we watched had a bunch of the better performances from the past year. So it was Carson Daly, I believe, is what we were watching. And the Madonna Super Bowl halftime escapades and a bunch of other stuff. And we can't spring to get these guys to perform live. What's going on now? We always had some kind of performance right there in Times Square, always on the big stage.
There was nothing, basically. And, you know, it was kind of interesting, like Brian Parker had said at your show, there were various folks who were on camera who were obviously slightly intoxicated.
A little intoxicated. A little.
So I watched the ball drop, and because I'm so amped, I can't go to sleep. So I decided to do the next best thing.
Watch CNBC. No,
C-SPAN.
The cure for insomnia.
C-SPAN. It actually was kind of interesting.
Okay.
And I got to tell you, those that like the law and sausages best not watch it being made.
Mm-hmm.
It was the vote finally came in from the Senate at 1:57 a.m.
Were you still up watching?
I was still awake.
I think we went to bed around 2. That sounds about right. I wasn't watching that. I was following on Twitter, though. We were at a friend's house playing the 80s Trivial Pursuit, which I rocked at.
Of course.
I'm the oldest guy in the room. Of course I won. But I was following all night long on Twitter, and that's where I get all my news now. I don't go to any of the networks. I follow like Wall Street Journal and the Times and USA Today and all their Twitter feeds and all their reporters, and I get all my information as it happens. It's fun.
I have to tell you, I think that NBC has a pretty good political crew.
Agreed with Chuck Todd and
Not only
Gregory
Chuck
and
Todd.
what's her name, Kelly O'Donnell.
Luke Russert.
Oh, Luke's awesome. He's very funny to follow.
Off of the old block.
He's very funny to follow on Twitter too. He's got some good stuff up. He's got a great sense of humor.
So I saw that the Senate voted 89 to 8. And there were three
abstain.
3 that did not vote.
Oh.
Which was interesting. One of them was a New Jersey senator.
Okay.
Democrat. Very interesting. Frank Lautenberg. I might have been past his bedtime. He's kind of old. One of the interesting things that Grover Norquist said this afternoon was, why should we pass something that was passed by a bunch of sleep-deprived octogenarians?
Good line.
Wow, Grover.
Good line.
You know, you already have been losing ground as far as, your pledge against new taxes. Mm-hmm. You kind of put the stake through the heart of that with that little comment. I don't think anybody from the Senate is going to want to be talking to you anytime in the future. So what we have now, I mean, literally right now, the Speaker of the House has not called the Senate bill to the floor, which means there is right now no action, and will be no action unless and until the bill is actually called to the floor. Now, one of 3 things can happen. They can table it, they can vote up or down, or they can vote on it with amendments.
Okay.
The Senate Democrats have already clearly stated, if it's amended, it's dead. We will not act. Now, they will be called into session tomorrow afternoon, I believe at 3, just in case the House actually went ahead and did something. But, folks, the sound of the pebbles falling in the background, that's the fiscal cliff, and we've just gone over it. And the reason why they're trying to get things done by Wednesday, tomorrow, is the 112th congressional session will come to an end. The 113th will start as of noon Thursday. What that also means is that any deal that's been done thus far goes bye-bye. It's off the table. They would have to renegotiate and start all over again. Now, can they do things retroactively? Yes, they can. But our markets are not going to be happy. And if you watch what the markets did at the end of yesterday's trading, S&P went up 125 points. Okay?
The Dow went up 168, I believe, at the end of the day.
That's correct. Okay? And basically all the markets went up by a significant percentage. You're going to watch them go flying down if the House has done nothing.
Well, the market opened down a bunch yesterday. And as the reports started coming in that there was more and more being done, you could start to see most of my regulars at the bar are brokers. Yeah. So we watch CNBC all day, and I want to say religiously now watch the ticker every afternoon. It's fun. We sit and we talk about what's going on, and it was a fun afternoon with a bunch of brokers saying, well, this is what's going on, and you can see how close the market feels we are to an actual something being done.
Now, for those of you who are living under a rock, what the Senate did last night was voted on a package that included the extension of the Bush tax cuts for everybody who earned up to $400,000 a year, or if you were a couple, $450,000. Okay, it also extended the unemployment benefits. It also, there was a dairy bill that passed.
I saw that. So we're not going to pay $8 a gallon.
Well,
that was done. That was done on its own, though, right?
No.
Oh, I thought that was taken care of first by itself. Because I'd heard that report when I woke up that had come in.
They had wrapped it in.
Oh, I don't like that.
No, because that means that the 113th Congress is going to have to rapidly deal with that, or we will be dealing with not even $10 a gallon. And the reason for that, folks, is because if the new bill wasn't passed, we would be going back to the 1948 standards. We didn't have the kind of ability to produce milk the way we do now in 1948. That's why the cost will go up remarkably. The other thing that will happen is those who are extended unemployed are not going to be getting their benefits. That basically cuts off 20% of our economy right there. And why do I say that? Because the folks who are unemployed, anywhere between 9.5%, almost 10%, depending on who you believe at this point in time, plus the folks who've actually gone off the grid, if they are receiving benefits, they're not saving. They are immediately spending that money for food, for clothing, for gas.
Milk.
Exactly. Not for long. Powdered milk anyway. Yay! So that has an impact not only on the actual 9.5% who are unemployed, it has an impact on twice that number. That's why it's safe to say that it would impact 20% of our economy. Not only that, but our tax rates will immediately go up to the Clintonian tax rates, which means that you're looking at anywhere between a 2.5% to 5% bump in your rate. Folks have been saying that means an average of about $2,500 more in taxes. So what our Republican friends have done in not agreeing to this particular compromise is they have allowed the largest tax increase in decades. Thank you, Grover. Thank you so much. Don't let the door hit you in the rear. Now, the other thing that is happening, too, is that there are certain Medicaid expenditures that will no longer be made, which means that doctors will not get paid at the rates that they've been accustomed to, which means that they will stop taking Medicare and Medicaid patients because they're not going to be refunded anything like they had been. I mean, we're talking about probably an impact of up to 50%.
Oh my.
No doctor in their right mind would take the chance that the Congress, which, by the way, the 112th Congress is worse than the so-called do-nothing Congress of 1947. 1947, they passed 1,900 bills. This year, or this last session, these last 2 years, they passed less than 1,000. Less than 1,000 bills actually became law. It is the worst performance ever.
And their ratings are fantastic.
9%.
I saw that the other day. I was like, wow.
And they're going to get better.
Wow, that's great.
Now, here's what I see potentially happening. One of the reasons why the House is not moving forward at this point in time is that the majority leader, a certain Representative Cantor from Virginia, indicated that he was in their private caucus this afternoon. The Democrats caucused at 12, the Republicans at 1, and at the 1 o'clock caucus, Representative Cantor indicated that he could not support the bill. That basically effectively cut the speaker out at the knees because Boehner has always relied on Cantor to round up the votes Cantor was the majority leader, not the whip, but the majority leader was pretty much responsible for corralling everybody with the whip to get the votes.
Oh, he was the right hand.
Not happening.
Wow.
Hand was closed.
Wow.
And there is some speculation, myself included, that this may well be a power grab on the part of Cantor to basically say that Speaker Boehner is ineffective as a leader and we need somebody else. Pick me, pick me, pick me. The problem that Cantor has is that the 113th Congress is not going to be constituted the same way as the 112th. It appears as though the elections did have somewhat of an impact, that impact being that I believe the Democrats picked up about 15 seats. They needed 25, so they're about 10 shy of the majority. That means there's 208 of them. So if you get any rogue Republicans, like 10 of them, you then have a new majority. Now, the Tea Party and the truly conservative faction roughly works out to be about 50 or 60 representatives. The fact that Boehner was not able to get his Plan B proposal even on the floor just before Christmas is an indication that he has very little control over his caucus, very little control over the Republican votes in the House. So that's why the speculation is that Cantor's going for blood at this point in time. But with more Democrats sitting in the House, the chances of him being successful are fairly small, because not one Democrat, not even the conservative Democrats, are going to vote for Cantor. He has proven to be, shall we say, a bit draconian in his viewpoint about fiscal matters. And this was something that came out in the Senate. If I listened a little to C-SPAN today, just because. And the comments that were coming from the Senate were much more like the comments that I was used to when I was living in Washington, D.C. My friend from Wisconsin, this being a Democratic speaker, speaking about a Republican senator, okay? This wasn't just a nicety that was being thrown out. They actually came up with an idea of how bipartisanship was necessary this time. 89-8. Yeah, it showed, okay? And you had a lot of folks who were saying on both sides of the aisle, we don't like what we passed, but we knew we had to pass it in order to avoid economic Armageddon.
Right.
The House Republicans apparently didn't get the memo. And the conservative group basically said that there were not enough cuts. They were okay with the tax provisions, but there were not enough cuts.
What do they want to see cut?
They want to see social spending cuts. They want to go after Medicare. They want to go after food stamps. They were not happy about the extension of the unemployment. And basically the Senate Democrats were saying, tough noogies, take it or leave it. And it appears as though the House is going to take them up on that and leave it, which means that unless the 113th session opens up pulling a rabbit out of their hat right out of the gate, there's going to be some hurting going on. And you could say that perhaps the Republicans were engaging in a little political calculus in that, well, 2 years from now, folks aren't going to remember this.
We'll remember.
Not only that, but there were a number of conservative Republicans who are very concerned about if they were to vote for the compromise, that they would then be primaried. Well, if they're concerned about being primaried, then our collective memory isn't that short, is it? We're not talking about the most logical thinking going on in Washington, D.C. at this point in time. So now I heard on the way in an interesting commentary by the local felonious host, our former governor, John G. Rowland, who posed that the president actually wanted us to go off the cliff so that he could enact greater changes with the new Congress coming in. Gov, the Republicans still have a bare majority in the House. Right. Well, he pointed out that we have a divided government, Republican House, a Democratic Senate, and of course, President Obama. So his logic wasn't really playing true, if you will, either. The president wanted to have us go off the cliff so that he could then force changes. That's not going to happen. And unless and until the Republicans in the House stop drinking the Kool-Aid, we are going to be dealing with a recession unlike anything we've ever known. What will happen is our gross national product we've been dealing with a 2% increase, okay? Mm-hmm. In order to be healthy and robust, we need to be in the 3 to 4% range. If we continue flying off the cliff, as we appear to be doing right now, everybody, I hope you packed a nice parachute, because it ain't going to be pretty, because you're going to see the 2% growth turn into a recessive number. It's going to be in the negatives. And because we have not fully recovered from the Great Recession, as they like to call it now, from 2008 forward, we could end up in a depression. And part of that is because the world economy ain't so hot either. And everybody's been watching us, and we can't get our stuff together. I'm boggled. I truly was an optimist. I honestly thought, no, they're not going to do that. No, they're not going to. They did. Holy cow. So hopefully the new Congress. Now, for instance, there was this Tea Party firebrand from Florida who did not get reelected. There was a Tea Party firebrand from Michigan who did not get reelected. Michelle Bachmann got reelected. Okay. Politics, strange stuff. But the Tea Party used to constitute about 30 seats. It's now down to about 20. So the conservative bloc is not as strong as it was in this coming Congress as it has been. Unless, there was one other thing. When the House was called into session this afternoon at noon, typically there is an invocation. The House chaplain implored the members in his invocation to please, even though it may not be a great compromise, we should still really have the grace to consider it and perhaps find the grace to pass it.
As I said to you when you had told me that earlier, I said, here's the thing. Compromise means both sides hate it.
Yep.
It doesn't mean that you both got what you want. It means just the opposite. It means that you're giving in on something that you wanted that's dear to your core. Sorry, sometimes you have to bend a little to make things work for the greater good. Both sides.
Now, the Republican senator that I was listening to on C-SPAN this afternoon, it's one of the more senior members. He's Republican from Wyoming. Essick, I think is his name. I don't quote me on that. He is the ranking member on a number of different committees. When a party is in the minority, the senior guy on the committee is called the ranking member, okay, as opposed to the chair. He said, what we used to do when I was working on bills, the person who I worked the most with was Senator Kennedy. And what we would do is we would sit down and we would say, okay, Ted, what's your core values? Okay, here are my core values. And we'd figure out what core values actually matched. And that's where we would start. And we would realize, we would be realistic enough to understand that we weren't going to get 100%. We might not even get 80%. But more often than not, we did get 80% when we started off with core values that matched. That was true politics, he said. Compromise is when nobody is happy. But what he was providing a roadmap for was how to come to a consensus, and how consensus bills had a greater chance of not only passing, but also being in the public good. Because you would have both sides' core values being matched somewhat, if not fully, somewhat. So everybody had something good that they could take back to their constituents and say, you know what? I wasn't able to get this, but I was able to get that. So he was saying, as much as I did not like this compromise bill, we had to start somewhere. And it is my hope that my Republican brethren in the House can look at this as a roadmap for getting going. And that was about the closest that he came to any kind of a critical statement about the House. I can tell you that Senator Boxer from California was not so kind. She was very kind about him. My friend from Wyoming, several times. And you could tell when she was saying that, that wasn't just an empty platitude. She was actually meaning what she said. That's the way that the old legislatures used to work.
My esteemed colleague is how most things started out.
Yep.
Almost every... I don't agree with my esteemed colleague, but lost that. We've lost that in the last 8 years, not even 4. It's actually maybe a little bit more than that.
12.
Although we'd see Clinton and Dole seem to work well together.
Yep.
And that's a ways back now too. That's what
Clinton, Dole, and Gingrich. Because Gingrich back then at least was a political realist and understood. The greatest example was Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan. They were polar opposites as far as ideology was concerned. They were polar opposites as far as basic politics were concerned. But they also kept in the forefront of their minds what is in the best interest of the country and what can we do to move forward. That has not been a concern of this last Congress at all.
Nope.
And the fact that there have been 990 bills that have been passed into law, and a vast majority of them were, let's name the post office, da-da-da, okay? We're not talking about substantive issues. Last year, the 112th House congressional folks passed 36 bills to repeal the Affordable Health Care Act. They knew that it would not pass the Senate. They knew even if it did pass the Senate, it would be vetoed, and they did not have enough votes to override the veto. So 36 bills that did absolutely nothing. They could have passed one bill and say, this is our stand. Fine. Now go on and do some business.
Mm-hmm.
Hasn't happened. And frankly, unless they somehow miraculously come to their senses and pass the Senate bill, the 112th Congress could not end soon enough. Truly. Truly. I guess we should probably pay some bills. Just because, that's what actually allows us to broadcast. Be right back.
What you need when you need it. On the Horn. onthehorn.com.
Budwitz & Meyerjack PC is a large Connecticut-based CPA firm with offices in Cheshire and Farmington, Connecticut. Large enough to handle engagements of enterprises with annual revenues in excess of $100 million, yet small enough to cater to smaller businesses and individual clients who expect personalized attention from partners and staff. Client service is the cornerstone of our practice. Our clients have a fixed fee for their audit and tax work. What this means to the client is we're approachable. Personal communication and client services make for strong relationships. Budwitz & Meyerjack, certified public accountants.
Sandits Travel for business and leisure. We'll take you there. Sandits Travel has been proudly serving Connecticut since 1960. That's over 50 years. And we're ready for another 50 years of superior service. Whether you prefer to come in, call in, or log on, we invite you to explore how efficient, diverse, and fun it is to book through Sandits Travel. Save your money and your time with us. Sandits Travel. We'll take you there.
And we're also brought to you by Deepwater Seafood of Avon. Have you been to the only fish market in the Farmington Valley? Deepwater is located on Route 44 and is open 6 days a week, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 6:30 p.m., and Saturdays, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. One of the best things about Deepwater is their fish are fresh. 3 deliveries daily to meet your needs. Deepwater has a menu of grilled fish items, scampi, fish and chips, soups, bisques, and chowders. For your catering needs, authentic paella, cedar plank salmon sides, and always the traditional New England clam bake. Deepwater also has the very best shrimp cocktail that you'll find anywhere. And I'm having some of that tonight. I'm just saying. Call in your order at 860-676-9657, and they will have your order ready for pickup when you arrive. Deepwater Seafood of Avon, not just for the halibut. And we're also brought to you by CentralCTDental.com. Doctors Camp, Sanborn, Lupini for serious issues or routine checkups. Go nowhere else. Easy to get to on the Plainville-Farmington line. Call 860-747-5761 or make an appointment online at CentralCTDental.com. And we're back. Now, one of the interesting things that is going to be happening here in Connecticut is on January 9th, our new legislature is actually going to be sworn in, and we're going to have a new speaker. A fellow by the name of Brendan Sharkey. Now,
you guys had him on the show, didn't you?
We did.
Okay.
It was broadcast, but not recorded.
Oh.
Yeah, there was a little glitch. A little glitch. However, it is entirely probable that come January, we will have Speaker designate Sharkey, because he's not Speaker-elect yet, but Speaker-designate Sharkey is indicated a willingness to be back on the show.
Oh, good. Is he going to come in, or is he going to phone in?
He came in before.
That's what I thought.
He's going to come in again.
Nice.
Thank you, Jen. And we will talk about the legislative initiatives that will be coming up. According to Felonious Roland, the legislature is expected to hit the ground running. And apparently, not only are we going to be dealing with school safety, gun control laws, and a revisiting of the mental health environment, if you will, in Connecticut, which are all good things. We're also going to have to be dealing with our own little budget issues, because the last legislature met over Christmas Eve and passed a patch, so that this year will not go into the books as a deficit. Yay. It also was there was a number of comments made by the legislative leaders when the session was over about how this was truly a bipartisan effort, that the Republicans felt as though not only were they allowed to be in the room, they were actually allowed to say some things, and people listened. Not only listened, but also accepted some of the offers of how to address the situation as a method of reaching the compromise. And that, I believe, is a good sign for Connecticut as far as the new legislative session is concerned. And it certainly bodes well for Speaker-designate Brendan Sharkey, who is not going to be dealing with the same issues that the former Speaker was dealing with, thank goodness. But it's also going to, it'll be interesting to see how the legislature works with the governor. There is a general image issue for the governor at this point in time about how he tends to be somewhat inflexible, how it's basically, I'm in the room, this is what we're going to do. But there's two things that are going to really change the dynamics. One is that Special Advisor Roy Occhiogrosso is stepping down, and that was effective as of today. Okay. So Roy is not going to be at the governor's elbow like he had been for the last 2 years. The other interesting thing is that the governor's legal advisor, the governor's lawyer, former Senator McDonald, has been appointed by Malloy to fill one of the 2 seats on the Connecticut Supreme Court. And it looks as though former Senator McDonald is going to sail through confirmation. He's the former chair of the Judiciary Committee. I should say former co-chair, because the House and the Senate basically run the committees together. And basically everybody who has been talking about this new appointment has said that not only is Senator McDonald qualified, but that he will be bringing a fresh and new perspective, having vetted so many different judges and justices before. He knows what makes good law and what doesn't. And he will also be the first openly gay Supreme Court justice. And as a matter of fact, it was Governor Malloy who married Senator McDonald to his husband 2 years ago.
Oh, wow.
3 years ago, actually. So you're going to have 2 of the governor's primary advisors no longer at his side, which it's going to be interesting, not only because the governor has yet another Supreme Court justice appointment to make, and if Senator McDonald is not at his side making suggestions as to who that could or should be, going to be very interesting. But it's also going to be very interesting because McDonald was very instrumental in working with the legislature, along with Roy Occhiogrosso, to get certain things done between the legislative office and the governor's office. We're not going to have that anymore. So the dynamics are going to be dramatically different. And we don't know yet who he's going to be bringing in as either of these 2 gentlemen's replacements. So hang on to your seats, folks, because this could be not a bumpy ride, but a very interesting one.
Now, as the guy who's leaving, and you've had the governor's ear for a while now, would you have recommendations? Or is that not okay? Or
Well, for instance, if it was Mr. Occhiogrosso, he probably would have made some suggestions to the governor as to who would be a good replacement for himself. For Senator McDonald, not so much, because once you've been nominated for a judge position, you pretty much need to divest yourself from all political activity.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was the case. That's interesting to know.
I'm fairly sure. Well, let's pull the curtain back a little bit for a second. This was not a surprise. The governor knew that Senator McDonald had put in an application. You have to go through judicial selection in order to be approved for a Superior Court judge, an appellate court judge, or a Supreme Court justice. And you have to have on the application what it is that you're applying for. So it would have been very clear what Senator McDonald was applying for.
Okay.
So they've known for a while. Now, is it possible that Senator McDonald could have suggested certain names for his replacement before the actual nomination was made?
Or as he was dotting his I's and crossing his T's?
That's possible. That would have been kosher.
Okay.
But once the nomination has been made public, not so kosher anymore.
Okay. I wasn't sure if it was some kind of conflict of interest, so obviously it would be.
Well, technically it wouldn't be, but if you want to be a judge, you want to be as pure as Caesar's wife.
Right. Keeping your separation of...
Right. That's even more so for the Connecticut Supreme Court. Okay? You don't want to have any hitch in your giddy up. You don't want to have anybody questioning anything that you have done. And it's already pretty clear from both the Senate and the House, and particularly the Judiciary Committee, that they like him. And it's probably going to be a very quick confirmation process for him. Seeing as that there are 2 vacancies, I'm fairly sure that the legislature will be acting very quickly to confirm the nomination. One other little interesting news tidbit, and we have a couple minutes left, so there's no reason why we can't dive into it. Did you hear about how a certain New Haven lawyer had filed a claim against the state of Connecticut relative to the Sandy Hook Elementary School?
I did. I heard it yesterday.
He apparently has withdrawn his claim. That was after the Attorney General basically said, yeah, no. There's no legitimate legal basis for the state of Connecticut to be a defendant defending against a child's claim. Now, for those of you who don't know, Attorney Irving Pinsky, who I never knew directly, but I knew by reputation, was a great lawyer to sign up clients and then refer them out and then get the 1/3 referral fee. Good old Irv thought it would be a good idea to sign up this family who have a 6-year-old who had survived the attack, but who had been emotionally impacted by hearing not only the gunfire but also the fighting over the intercom. And had indicated to the claims commissioner that they were going to sue the state for $100 million. As of today, Attorney Pinsky had indicated that he was going to be withdrawing that claim with right to reapply at some point in the future because more information was coming out. What the Attorney General basically said was, not only was this the wrong forum for this kind of discussion, but there is nothing that could point to how the state would be responsible for a madman shooting up 20 students and 6 teachers and his mom. So, and it should also be noted, I have been a trial lawyer for 23 years. The Connecticut Trial Lawyers Association felt constrained to actually say something. The Connecticut Trial Lawyers Association also recently issued a statement critical of Pinsky's filing. It read, "The Connecticut Trial Lawyers Association joins with all other citizens in Connecticut in mourning the tragic loss of life in Newtown. We believe that the timing and circumstances of this action are ill-advised. We will continue to extend our heartfelt sympathies to the victims of the Newtown tragedy, and we remain committed to joining the efforts of countless individuals in Connecticut and around the country to find ways to assist the victims and families affected by this tragedy. A well-measured, even comment. Attorney General Jepsen, who, by the way, was complimented by a certain radio felonious host, who made a point of the fact that he was Republican and the Attorney General is Democrat, but was effusive in his compliments for how Attorney General Jepsen was handling this particular claim, as well as the Hurricane Sandy stuff, as well as he was going back to the very beginning of time, practically. And you have to worry about when someone is as effusive in their compliments, what's going on in the background.
Mm-hmm.
So just so you folks know, one last little thing about the fiscal cliff. And this was from First Read, MSNBC. That's no longer MSNBC. That's right. MS kind of dropped.
Yeah.
Oops. It was updated 8/15. The House was moving late Tuesday toward giving its approval to the bipartisan Senate-passed legislation to handle the most severe consequences of the fiscal cliff that onset this morning. Interesting language. That onset? That's not a verb, guys. Just cluing you in. The House was moving toward allowing an up or down vote on the new proposal, which passed the Senate 89-8 at 1:53 a.m. That would allow the taxes to rise in individuals with income over $400,000 and household income over $450,000. So that's interesting. And that may well be the speaker basically saying, doing his best Pontius Pilate and saying, I'm washing my hands of this.
Might be.
You guys, I will allow the vote. I'm not going to tell you how to vote. Just vote your conscience.
Do your thing.
And we'll see what happens.
When will that vote take, does it say? Is that tomorrow? Or is it going to be this evening? Because you said up, down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Was moving late Tuesday toward giving its approval in the bipartisan, was moving toward allowing an up or down vote on the new proposal. They don't say when. Though conservatives had spent the better part of the New Year's Day threatening to torpedo the legislation, GOP leaders acknowledged that they likely couldn't gather enough votes to amend the Senate bill and send it back to the upper chamber. The House Rules Committee met late Tuesday to set parameters for debate in the House that could result in a vote on the Senate legislation as early as this evening.
Oh, wow. So I may stay up late and watch a little television tonight.
I may be watching C-SPAN again. God help me.
You won't be watching it for long.
I think I'll have some champagne and some shrimp cocktail from Deepwater Seafood.
Nice.
Yeah, because I didn't have any champagne last night.
No?
I was tired.
I had one glass. I did have a nice bottle of Montepulciano, though.
Nice.
I love Italian wines.
Well, folks, you've been listening to News Talk tonight. I am grateful, Brian, that you stuck around. You make a great co-host. Jen, please get better because we love you having you here. I know that for the next couple weeks, Jen is going to be a little busy with her new job, so she hasn't promised when exactly that she'll come back, but I'm hoping towards the end of this next month that she will be back. In the meantime, you've been listening to Brian Lee, and I'm Dave Moore, your host on News Talk Tonight. We are brought to you by Amazon.com, Gateway Financial Partners, Sandits Travel, Shipper Technologies, Budwitz and Meyerjack CPAs, Deepwater Seafood of Avon, and CentralCTDental.com. You're listening to On the Horn. You can listen to us. You can tweet us. You can Facebook us. Really, we're 21st century guys. Anyways, Happy New Year, and I'll see you next week.
here for you right now.
onthehorn.com